Hey, Bill O'Reilly.com premium members, welcome to the No Spin News. We have a lot to talk about today, and I want to go through it fairly slowly so you get what's happening here. I think you know it already, but it's worth just going through it step by step. Fascinating part of American history. So we have a media in America that no longer seeks the truth, okay? Doesn't check the truth, doesn't try to find it. And I've told you that before. It's beyond a reasonable doubt. That's what's happening. Much of that national media that does not seek the truth does so because it's committed to ideology. Enter the Washington Post, which breaks a story that says President Trump, in meeting with two Russian leaders, gave them classified information. Big story in the Washington Post. You heard about it. Cable goes wild, all of that, okay? Now, the Washington Post is not as bad as some, okay? It's not the New York Times, but it does tilt sharply to the left. However, the two reporters who wrote the article, I believe, did get information saying that. They used anonymous sources. If you can, read the article. I'm going to walk you through it now, but I want you to read it for yourself so you know I'm not misleading you or anything like that. As I said yesterday on this podcast, newscast, my job's not to defend the Trump administration. It's to look out for you, to make sure you get the truth. All right, so the scenario is, here's President Trump, here's the Russian foreign minister, here's the Russian ambassador to the USA. And in the course of the conversation, the president is bragging about his good intelligence and talking about how to fight ISIS. Mr. Trump badly wants to enlist Putin and Russia in the fight against ISIS, okay? And he says, look, we have intel that ISIS is building bombs to put in computers and carry on board airplanes. And you'll remember that one of your airliners was blown out of the sky by ISIS, killing 200 people. That was in Egypt. Okay? So that's the framework of the conversation. Within that, the Washington Post reports that Trump gave away some secrets. Now, if you read the article, it's all based on secondary sources. Let me explain that. A primary source is when you see something and tell a reporter what you saw. So I, Bill O'Reilly, saw this, and I'm telling the Washington Post what I saw. That's a primary source. A secondary source is if I, Bill O'Reilly, tell another person who then tells the Washington Post. All right? So the article is almost all secondary anonymous sources. Nobody identified. So that means that somebody who was close to that meeting in the White House, didn't necessarily have to be there, but heard about it in some way, shape, or form, called another person and said, hey, this is what I heard happen. And then the other person spoke to the Washington Post, which identifies the people as former U.S. intelligence officials, someone close to the White House, that kind of thing. Anonymous, anonymous, anonymous. All right, so that person who's talking to the Washington Post is saying, oh, President Trump gave out this information. He never should have given it out. Okay, so the cable runs wild, the internet runs wild. Here's Trump again screwing up. This is the scandal du jour, like the soup du jour. Scandal of the day. This story will last 1 or 2 days. That's it. It's inconsequential, and I'll tell you why in a moment. But this is the scandal du jour. And the strategy on the part of the anti-Trump press is wear Trump down. Report so many bad things about him every single day that folks just throw up their hands and go, he's incompetent, shouldn't be in there. That's the overall strategy. All right. Now, in the meeting with the I knew I was going to say that, the Russian foreign minister, Lavrov, and the Russian ambassador was the national security advisor, General H.L. McMaster. Now, this guy's a pretty straight shooter. And here's what he said about the Washington Post report.
What I'm saying is really the premise of that article is false, that in any way the president had a conversation that was inappropriate or that resulted in any kind of lapse in national security. And so I think the real issue, and I think what I'd like to see really debated more, is that our national security has been put at risk by those violating confidentiality and those releasing information to the press that could be used connected with other information available to make American citizens and others more vulnerable.
Okay, so he's pretty adamant, General McMaster, that it's the leakers that are violating national security, not the president. Now, the liberal press immediately parses his comments. Yesterday, General McMaster said the story was false. Today, he said the premise of the story is false. And then they do hour after hour after hour on CNN and MSNBC about always parsing. It's clear to any fair-minded person that General McMaster, the national security advisor who was in the meeting with President Trump, disputes any dissemination of classified information that was inappropriate. Now, remember, the president has a wide range to tell anybody what he wants to tell them if he's trying to persuade them to help him out in anything. So McMaster says it was nothing untoward. He didn't screw up. He just was trying to get the Russians' attention and trying to get the Russians to help us fight ISIS. And it was totally legitimate, totally appropriate. This is McMaster's opinion. Now, to be fair, and that's what I want to be here, accurate, you expect McMaster to back up his boss. You expect him to do that. But he's not going to go out and lie because his whole legacy is on the line if he does that, in my opinion. So once McMaster spoke to the press this morning and laid this out in a very vivid way, then they started to backtrack. Now, the Washington Post said, well, we stand by our story. Sure, because I'm sure the Washington Post was told what they printed. I'm positive they were told that. They didn't make it up. But what they were printed came from a secondary source, leaked by someone with an agenda. And that's not the truth. Okay? So when you read the internet on the headlines, oh, President Trump did this. No, he didn't. According to McMaster, he didn't violate anything. He didn't do anything inappropriate or dangerous or foolish or anything like that. But you're never going to get that kind of perspective from the anti-Trump press. Again, what they want to do and what they are doing, kind of successfully, is every day there's a different screw-up. Every day they're going to hammer Trump. They're never going to say, hey, the housing market is on fire. Americans are feeling confident about the economy, so much so that they're buying houses at higher prices now. They're never going to give you that. You're never going to get that, ever. It's going to be Trump screwed up, Trump screwed up, Trump screwed up. Okay, and I can guarantee you on the foreign trip, it's going to be the same stuff. But McMaster did a service to President Trump today. He was credible, he was specific, and he defused the story to some extent. Now, I was listening to cable news, which gives me a massive headache. And when I was involved with cable news, I couldn't watch it as much as I can now. I have to turn it off. It's insane. All the speculation. And here's the speculation. Well, by talking to the Russian foreign minister, that President Trump endangered the person or persons who give us intelligence about ISIS. Come on. Come on. Because maybe now the Russians can figure out where it came from or what area it came from and disrupt it or whatever. I mean, come on. So the President of the United States cannot have a conversation with the foreign minister of a powerful country about how he wants that country to help us against ISIS, and here's why they should do it. Come on. It's really, really pernicious and hateful. And again, it's not my job to stand up for the Trump administration, but it is my job to be fair, and this is insane. Insane. All right, so on Friday, the president leaves for his overseas jaunt. And day one, he goes to Saudi Arabia, and in Saudi Arabia, he's going to schmooze with the leaders there, and that's all about enlisting that country to fight against terrorism and to make sure that they're a steadfast ally against Iran. That's what that's all about. Then on day two, Gulf state leaders and 50 Muslim heads of state, 50, that's a big crew, they meet with President Trump, and that's all about getting moderate Muslims on board to fight against the jihad. Okay, so that's good, right? It's good. And it'll be the dog and pony show, and they'll all be bowing and having... You can't have cocktails, which is going to torque a lot of them off, but they'll have canopies and stuff. All right, then from Saudi Arabia, on day three, the president goes to Jerusalem, and he meets with Netanyahu and the Israelis to assure the Israelis the U.S. isn't tilting toward the Arabs. You know what that is. All right, and then he goes to the Vatican from Jerusalem. And the president's going to meet with the Pope, and the Pope's a little skeptical about the president's hard line on immigration because the Pope's from Argentina, and he knows the poverty of South and Central America and Mexico. So, Donald Trump's going to try to disarm the Pope, not co-opt him, but say, look, this is our point of view, and we're not anti-immigrant, but we just need to enforce the laws, and it'll be fine. I think the Pope will say nice things and whatever. In the past, the Pope has been a little skeptical, and the president's trying to convince him that he's not the devil, pardon the pun. All right, then he goes from the Vatican meeting to Belgium and tries to bolster the NATO core by asking them once again to pay their fair share, help us out in Afghanistan, and help us out in the war on terror, the NATO nations. All right, then after that, big meeting with the EU people, then the new French president, and they'll all be nice, and they'll be waving. And then the president goes to the G7 economic summit in Sicily, hosted by the president of Italy. Again, everybody be waving and nice and all of that. Okay, sounds like a good trip, but I guarantee you, any faux pas, any slip up, going to be wall to wall on the hate Trump press and the cable stuff. The people are getting on to the cable, though. They're getting on. However, there's a hardcore cadre of millions, I would say it's millions of Americans who hate Trump so much, they just want this every day. And they get it primarily from cable, and they get it from the late night comedians. Okay, they get that hate Trump, hate Trump, hate Trump. We hate him. He's this, he's that, he's that. It's an industry now. All right, so we all have this, what happened today. And if you want to ask me questions about it, go to the message boards or bill@BillO'Reilly.com, bill@BillO'Reilly.com. I'll answer any question you have tomorrow, all right, on this blog. All right, now, in another piece of news that didn't get a lot of attention, there is a bill, an immigration bill, all right, that's being crafted in the Senate right now. And I want to read you what the bill has because it's almost identical to what I have been saying. It's very interesting. So, Senators Cornyn from Texas and McCall from Texas. And Congressman McCall. Senator Cornyn, Congressman McCall. All right? They're trying to fashion an immigration bill. And number one, it would punish sanctuary cities, all right, by withholding money, force parents of undocumented teenagers to wear electronic ankle monitors so the kids do not skip deportation hearings. That's going to be tough to get that in there. And then establish 5-year minimum prison sentences for immigrants who illegally re-enter the USA after being deported. That's Kate's law. Okay, so that should be in there. I'm not sure about the ankle monitors. I think you got to have an address. They've got to have a place to live. You got to know where they are. But I'm not sure ankle monitors on parents of undocumented teens the way to go here. That's a little too punitive. Sanctuary cities, sure. Deny them funds. They're not obeying federal law. They're creating anarchy. Absolutely. Kate's law, 100%. Okay, so The bill would also call for increased detention space. All right, that makes sense. And the boosts the number of immigration judges on the border to speed hearings. Okay, I'm for that. It also calls for increased criminal prosecutions of immigrants across the border illegally. Well, we already have that case law. Would reimburse governors who deploy their state's National Guard to help patrol the U.S. border, which I've called for ever since President Bush the Younger was in office. All right, so I like a lot of this bill, but you can't punish civilians, people who, it's not going to get through then. Then you create a firestorm. Just do it in a very methodical way that can be explained without this craziness, because you want to get something done. All right, another story that getting lost in the weeds here. This is a very interesting story. Bethel University, I'm not sure what that is, but it's in Minnesota. I'm sorry. So Bethel University, a student walks into class. He's wearing a Chicago Blackhawks sweatshirt. Okay, Chicago Blackhawks, a hockey team. So he's told that his clothing is, quote, offensive and hurtful because the Blackhawks logo is in Indian. No derogatory. It's nothing derogatory. It's not Redskins. It's a Indian tribe, Blackhawks. Okay? So the controversy then unfolds at Bethel University, which is a Christian college. And the kid, Cody Albrecht, who is from Chicago, he turns his sweatshirt inside out because he becomes aware, he says, of the unease in his classroom. Okay. So everybody goes, oh, wait, right on, Cody. And the teacher, the instructor of the class, is a Native American or part Native American. And he says, he yelled at Cody. Says, you come to class with an Indian mascot sprawled across your shirt. Bold move, sir. Okay? I mean, come on. It's the Chicago Blackhawks. It's a hockey team. It's been around for decades. This is craziness, all right? This is insane. And poor Cody, I mean, under tremendous pressure, I guess did the right thing to diffuse the situation. I don't think he's a snowflake. But anybody offended by a Chicago Blackhawks sweatshirt is. And that's, of course, a theme of Old School Life in the Sane Lane. That, I mean, if you're offended by a Chicago Blackhawks sweatshirt, you're a snowflake. There's something wrong with you. All right? Okay. So let's get to the mail, which is really good. Every day it's good. But I want your questions because that makes it an interactive experience here on the No Spin News. I like that interactive stuff. All right, Andrea in New York City says, with all due respect, Mr. O'Reilly, it's nonsense what you said about President Trump tweeting. The left and Democrats will never approve of anything he says, no matter what. Try to measure speech to appease them is a waste of time and does not advance the country. We think President Trump should tweet more, not less. Okay, I understand that opinion, Andrea, but what my overarch is that the president will fail or succeed based on his programs, what he's successful in doing. And that if you tweet provocatively every day, what you're doing, as I just pointed out about the housing, becomes lost in the controversy. So if you lessen the controversy, more of your achievements will get highlighted, you would think. Or, if you want to see more tweets, have the president tweet about his accomplishments. Keep it positive. Rather than every time he attacks somebody, that overrides what's happening in the country. I hope you understand my point. Newport Richey, Florida, Frank down there says, great podcast, Bill. I agree the president should be more measured at times with his tweet, but there's something to be said for keeping people guessing. Is there a tape recording? Comey's not saying much. I haven't heard him refute the president's claim. He told him 3 times he wasn't being investigated. Your thoughts? My thoughts are that if you say you might have a tape recording, then Congress is going to want to hear the tape recording. And that becomes a huge controversy. So I don't think James Comey is going to refute the president. I'm not sure about that. If there is a tape recording, Comey would have to, be careful. I got that. I got your point. But again, you create a firestorm by saying, well, I might have a tape recording. Maybe it's worth it. Wouldn't be for me. Sally in North Tonawanda, New York. Bill, we think your comments on the podcast were spot on. Really shocked at this point in his term. President Trump is still having communication issues. All of this stuff should have been ironed out by now. I'm not sure that President Trump and his staff were prepared for the ongoing assaults every hour on the hour. Now, I told him face-to-face, man-to-man, that this was going to happen, but, telling someone and experiencing it, two different things. So I think he's going to change some of his communications people. There are other ways to combat the dishonest press. He should look into those ways. But it is a problem. Messaging is a problem for President Trump at this point. Anthony's in Gaithersburg, Maryland. How can President Trump eliminate the leaks coming out of the White House that are damaging to him? I guess polygraphs. That's what I would do. I polygraph everybody in the White House and say, are you talking about things to people outside of this sphere? I think you'd have to do that. It's the only way you could get to the bottom of it. And the leaks are definitely damaging not only President Trump, but the country. And that's the big reason I think Comey got sacked, because he wasn't really investigating the leaks. And I think that really angered Donald Trump. Now, that is speculation on my part, but educated speculation. All right, Loretta, Mr. O'Reilly, would like to know your view on President Trump wanting to end press conferences. Not press conferences per se, but he has threatened to say, look, I'll do them on a regular basis. I'm not going to use a surrogate. I think he has to have a White House spokesperson. I think it would be foolish not to have one. Karen in Salem, Oregon, capital of the state. Hey, Bill, on vacation in Hawaii, we visited Pearl Harbor, and the tour guide referenced your book, Killing the Rising Sun, saying it's an excellent historical account. Well, that is really great to hear. Tour guide at Pearl Harbor, touting Killing the Rising Sun. We believe it is a very, very strong book and great gift for Father's Day. If you want me to sign copies of Rising Sun or Old School Life in the Sane Lane, or both, get those orders in now to BillO'Reilly.com. Sharon Jones, West Deptford, New Jersey. Bill, it's Amalie Arena, as in Family Arena, in Tampa. Really missed the factor, but loving the podcast. My autistic son has read all of your books and is excited about the new book announcement. So we'll have a new Killing book announcement shortly, Sharon. And the Amalie Arena, okay, we're going to be there in Tampa on September 20th. Tickets make great Father's Day gifts. Hope you check that out. Okay, Terry in Virginia Beach. Bill, been a premium member for a while, read all your books, excited because my husband just bought us tickets to see you in Baltimore in September to celebrate our 45th wedding anniversary. Congratulations to you, Terry, and your husband. He's a great guy for getting you tickets, and we'll see everybody at the Royal Farms Arena in Baltimore on Friday night, September 23rd. It's going to be a great show. You guys are going to love it. And again, congrats on 45 years together. Andrew King, Toms River, New Jersey. Of all the books you have written, which would you say was the most difficult to research from a historical point of view? No question, Killing Jesus. Dugard and I, it was so hard to research that book. The Israeli government gave us great access, but it was really tough getting to the truth of all of that, because you just couldn't rely on the Gospels. You had to go to the historical record, Josephus, the Roman records, and Dugard did a great job on Killing Jesus. That was the toughest book to research by far. Nicholas, Weston, Florida. You hit it out of the park again, O'Reilly. Old School Life in the Sane Lane. It was a book that even I, as a college freshman, vastly enjoyed. I wrote it for you, Nick. I wrote Old School for you millennials, so you know what old school philosophy is and can compare it to the snowflakes that you see every day. Susan, Plainville, Connecticut. Bill, enjoyed the podcast and was glad to see you've decided to do a weekly segment with Beck on Fridays for a while. Yep, Beck and I will be reconnoitering this coming Friday on his radio program. And it's always very lively to do that, and I'm happy that he's having me in. Fresno, California, Lynn is a student of the Pacific War. I found Rising Sun to be interesting and accurate. The emperor had Japan's torture and brutal treatment of people he knew about it. Apparently, for political reasons, General MacArthur and the U.S. government covered that up. They did. They did. The emperor knew, Hirohito knew, that the Japanese were torturing people all over Southeast Asia and in China and in the Pacific. He knew it. And so did the press. They didn't care. And MacArthur, when he took over the occupation, didn't want the Japanese giving U.S. forces a hard time, so he kept Hirohito in power. But Hirohito was just a figurehead, had nothing to say. All right, and Linda, finally, in Walworth, New York, just ordered several shirts on BillO'Reilly.com. Thank you for providing quality merchandise. We try. We try, and I want to tell everybody that we do not donate all the proceeds any longer from the website to charity, all right, because this is an expanding universe where I have to employ people now. It's a little bit different than it was when I was on TV, so just want you all to know that. But we are giving an enormous amount of money to charity, $30,000 today. I gave to 3 very worthy charities. We continue to do that, and your patronage makes that possible. So another great experience for me. I hope you enjoyed it as premium members, and we will talk to you again tomorrow.